literally 2 months to the day after coming up with this idea and writing it on a piece of paper in this class, we were interviewing Rafa Benitez in the training ground just before the season started.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Natter with Nilan. If you're enjoying these interviews, make sure you drop a like on the video, comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel because I've got loads more interviews coming up. Today, I'm joined by the producer, Zahra Zomorrodian. And here she is now. Zahra, welcome to the channel. Thank you very much for making the time to be here.
Thank you very much for inviting me on your channel.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm really looking forward to having a chat with you. First things first, how are you? How have you been in this incredibly difficult last year that we've had?
It's been a real mixed bag for us. I have a son with autism and he did not react very well to lockdown. So that bit, real life stuff has been tricky, but film wise, it's gone all right. You know, we actually managed to finish our film and get it released. So, which at times I didn't think was going to happen. So it's kind of mixed bag.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the case for a lot of people. It's a lot of highs and lows, but it kind of feels more extreme in the last year that we've had. But I'm glad to hear that you've come out the other side and hopefully things are looking a lot better for this year. So I wanted to ask you, how did your filmmaking journey begin? So you're a producer. How did that start for you?
Well, I kind of took a weird path because I started out in theatre.
Okay.
So I did performing arts at college, but stagecraft, not kind of on stage stuff. And really loved working in the theatre. Like, buzz of live audience and stuff is amazing. I still miss it now, but there's a point where you just go, I can't see myself touring all the time. It's like a young person's game. I can't see myself carrying heavy things forevermore. So I moved to America for some bizarre reason.
Oh, wow.
Met James, who is my partner in FNA, but also we're married. And we came back to England to make films and it was an adult education class, which was really, I think a lot of people go and spend 3 years at university, but we sort of learned probably what most people learn in 3 years in 20 weeks, which was really cool.
That does sound good.
And then we just started making, at this time, it was just as the digital revolution was taking place. So there wasn't really much happening because people couldn't afford film. And we grabbed hold of some cameras and just started making things.
Sounds amazing, and it sounds like the right attitude to have to get into this world of filmmaking and making content.
Yeah, definitely.
So you have produced and I believe co-directed a feature documentary called We Are The Geordies, which follows Newcastle United in the last time that they were in the Championship in their season where they're trying to get back up to the Premier League. How did that all come about?
It was a really, really bizarre journey because I'd never made a documentary before and hadn't really ever thought about making a documentary before. But I went to London. This was June 2016. I went to London to do a course with Stephen Cleary and Samantha Hawley on low budget filmmaking. And during that course, I was kind of quite arrogant because we'd been making stuff for so long. And I was like, you know, what can you tell me about making low budget films? But there was just a real penny drop moment where the kind of philosophy that Stephen Cleary was trying to get across to people was, instead of writing a script and spending years and years and years writing it, redrafting it, getting something you're happy with, then sending it out, look at what you have and to resource it to make the film. Look at the resources you have around you and create something from that. So it's just like a kind of slightly backwards way of doing things to how we would normally do things. It was on that course, I was already involved with some Newcastle United supporters groups, and I just thought I wrote on a little scrap of paper, Newcastle United fans. And that was very much what I wanted to do, was focus on something around Newcastle United fans. And at the same time, Rafa Benitez had joined the club, and he'd kind of the joke we all said was he's gone from the Bernabeu to Burton Albion. because, you know, here he was having managed Real Madrid to managing Newcastle United in the Championship. So those two things came together, and we got permission from the club to film them. And literally 2 months to the day after coming up with this idea and writing it on a piece of paper in this class, we were interviewing Rafa Benitez in the training ground just before the season started.
Amazing. That's so cool.
It was unreal how quickly everything sort of happened.
I'm guessing you expected it to be a bit more sort of difficult for those kind of things to fall into place.
Yeah, well, it's that thing, isn't it? You kind of say, okay, let's just do it, and then you start and it's great. And then the troubles with this one happened at the end of the season after we'd sort of done it, because we'd sort of cash flowed it with some private investment during the course of the season. But then when we got to the end of the season, we ran out of money, and we then needed to kind of then come up with the money to finish the film. And that just took forever, because people suddenly go, well, why weren't people coming in at the beginning? You know, what's wrong with this project? Why don't people want to invest in it? And you kind of go, well, we did have somebody who was investing in it, and then that fell apart for a whole host of reasons. And, you know, you kind of then have to start rebuilding it backwards, where you've already shot the film, but you still need to finish it, because, you know, with documentary, as I discovered, a lot of the work happens after you finished.
That leads me on to my next question, which was going to be, what was the most important thing you've learned as a producer through the making of this film that maybe you didn't know before?
I don't know what I've learned that I didn't know before. Just documentary is very difficult. It's also, again, it's a mixed bag, because on the one hand, you want to go, well, don't start it if you don't have the money to finish it. But then at the same time, you kind of go, if we hadn't started it then and waited till we'd had the money, then we would never have made the film. So it's always a very, it's a double-edged sword, you know. On the one hand, you kind of feel like an idiot for rushing in when you don't have all the resources in place, and then you end up trapped and stuck and in limbo. But then at the same time, if you hadn't done it to start with, it would never have happened.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's a good lesson to learn. I'm a big football fan. I find football to be, you know, a very passionate game, a very emotional game. And I think fans are at the center of that. I think outside of football fans, like the outside perspective of what a football fan is or what a football fan represents, sometimes I think that football fans are painted in a certain way, and that way at times can be quite negative. What would you like an audience to get from watching this film about the way that they should view football fans?
It's a strange one, because with Newcastle and Newcastle United in particular, there's a very particular way that they are viewed. And I'm guessing that from what you're saying about the negative perception that, you know, we're getting into like hooliganism and blah, 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 which, yes, that is a negative connotation. But for me, what I was trying to say with the film was that Newcastle fans are just like any other football fans. That, you know, so we deliberately went to get as diverse a cast as possible. It would have been really easy to just get a bunch of, you know, fat Geordie blokes and lads. And we were trying not to do that. And then the other thing was just to show people that the passion that fans have, the emotional investment, the financial investment, but actually the physical investment. It's funny because Facebook memories are coming up all the time at the minute, as they do. But I'm looking at them, which I don't normally do, because this is kind of the run into the season. And about a week ago, it said, we've still got 8 matches to go. That's 8 more, you know, days of shooting. We've already done 50 days of shooting. You know, we take into account 46 games in the Championship, cup games, going here, going there. And I'm like, I'm exhausted. I'm a filmmaker. The fans are actually paying to do this. And I mean, there was one period we actually traveled 1,000 miles in a week, and it's only a little country. As you know, I just think the commitment, I think the football authorities need to look at the commitment that fans put in and stop taking them for granted. And hopefully that is one positive thing to come from the pandemic, that people realize how important supporters are to the game, because playing in empty stadiums is just rubbish.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that was going to lead me on to my next question, but I want to quickly take it back a bit, because you made a point that on a personal level, I'm quite interested in. So obviously, you know, when I first got into football, Newcastle were and are, in my opinion, still a massive club in size and stature and fan base and history and everything. I've seen them relegated twice now. And I think the first time they came straight back up. And then the second time, I think they came straight back up as well. But you were obviously documenting that second time. Was there a hesitation while you were filming it? Because you know, if you capture the moment, you know, leading up to Newcastle getting promoted again, you know, it's great. And then you've got, you know, you encapsulate the spirit of the whole city, the football club, the fan base. Was there a point during the season which you thought this might not happen, and therefore we might be documenting the season when Newcastle becomes a championship club rather than an aspiring Premier League club again?
Yeah, I mean, so at the very beginning, I was pretty confident we would get promoted, and rather flippantly kept saying, but even if we don't get promoted, as long as we're not mid-table and mediocre, it'll be fine, because drama inherently is conflict, and, you know, not making it up is dramatic. That will make it a more engaging film. Even, God forbid, being relegated again wouldn't be the worst thing from a dramatic point of view for the film. Then once you get into the season and you're following it and you're kind of trying to write the story in your head as you're making this film, you kind of think we really do need to get promoted. And there was a period, and it's in the film, Ipswich away, which was Easter weekend. And I mean, you know, Ipswich away from Newcastle Easter weekend in itself is a horrific journey to make, because you have to get the train down from Newcastle to Peterborough, then you change and you have to go on this little kind of rattle thing that goes all the way out to Natter. It's a horrific journey. And we were 3-0 down, and it's actually the only match ever I've left early, because I'll always stay till the very, very, very bitter end. But I thought, this is just going to be horrific, because there was a problem with the trains. I thought, I really don't want to be stuck with a load of camera gear and a lot of very, very, very angry Geordie people as we are throwing this away, which has felt like what we were doing. So we left early, myself and the camera guy, and so we got to Peterborough train station before everybody else to make it home. And that period, I really did think it was all going to fall apart. And then somehow, miraculously, it didn't. And we got a Hollywood ending, which is amazing to me, because all of these companies after us have made films, whether it be Fulwell 73 doing Sunderland Till I Die, or the Manchester City one, or the Spurs one, a couple of American ones before us, being the All or Nothing things. And every single one of them, the teams have failed to do what they set out to do at the start of the season. So the Manchester City one, yeah, they won the title, but at the very beginning, it's made clear in the opening kind of voiceover that their aim is to win the Champions League, and they didn't. So I'm really glad that we didn't kill our club by following them, which is kind of, I suppose, in some ways what happened with Sunderland. I mean, that was just a big nosedive through 2 relegations.
Yeah, no, I did 2 weeks work experience at Fulwell 73 years ago. So I know the guys quite well, and they are, you know, really passionate Sunderland fans. And I've seen a bit of Sunderland Till I Die, and it is, you know, engrossing and entertaining. And I would like to see more football documentaries, but I was just intrigued to see from your point of view, like from what I can't remember following Newcastle in the Championship either time that they were relegated that closely, but I just remember them being promoted pretty straightforward the season afterwards. And I just always wondered, if you're following the team through the middle of their journey, the Championship is not straightforward. You know what I mean? It's just not straightforward. And I always thought, like, if there becomes a point where it's like, oh, this might not go the way we want, not only as fans, but as storytellers, as filmmakers, what do you do then? But I suppose you have to stick with it, and you have to sort of ride it out. And yeah,
I mean, that was, like I say, it's the Ipswich away, which was kind of this weekend, if you like. There was a real terror there that we'd lost it, and we were going to we're a very fatalist. On the one hand, they're quite a optimistic fan base, Newcastle United fans, but there's also that it would just be like us to do something really ridiculous. And I think one of the, I can't remember who it is, but one of the supporters says it would just be like Newcastle to be in first or second place all the way through, and then right at the end fall into the playoffs and then get pipped in the playoff final by the team who was in sixth place. You know, that would just be a Newcastle thing to do. So it was really important that we were in one of the top two promotion places so that we didn't have to go through the playoffs. We actually won the championship in the 89th minute of the last game of the season.
Oh, wow.
So when I say Hollywood ending, it was literally the final minute of the final game of the season that was when we won the championship. And it was Jack Grealish scored a goal for Aston Villa against Brighton to give us the title. So it was kind of, it's the film itself, even if you're not a Newcastle United fan, I would guess unless you're a Sunderland fan, there's a massive emotional resonance. And I think we capture it really well because the majority of the time, the cameras are not on the footage on the field, and people keep going, oh, it's because you couldn't afford the footage. And I'm like, well, it was a deliberate, if it was up to me, we would have had no footage whatsoever. It would have been done with stills. But when we were showing it to fans, they were going, we want to see some footage. So, you know, that's why we included the actual footage of the games. But most of the time when we're in the stadium, we're watching fans and watching fans' faces. Because to me, that particularly with men and particularly with northern men, there's just this, it's the only time where that mask that we all wear comes off completely and you're totally engrossed in what's happening in front of you and not thinking about whatever.
Yeah. I mean, what you said about the Hollywood ending you got in terms of, you know, the 89th minute and all that, like, I dare say if you were writing it, you couldn't have written it better. You know, it's just the way it turned out. Do you feel like you were in the right place at the right time for that season to document Newcastle's journey?
Definitely. I mean, the big thing for me was because Rafa Benitez was there, I thought that would actually give us a little bit more. It wouldn't be so parochial. It wouldn't just feel like a Newcastle United and nobody else should be interested kind of story. Because unlike the other films and the other TV shows where they're focusing on celebrity, we're not focusing on the players, we're not focusing on the manager, but you do need a little something beyond, otherwise it's just a group of people. So that was a really important part of it, was that Rafa Benitez was there. Then you kind of hope that it's going to have a happy ending, but to actually be there at that moment was amazing. And the other thing is we also rely a lot on fan footage. So there's a lot of footage, a lot of the film is shot on people's phones or whatever they happen to have with them in the crowd. And I was in the crowd kind of doing fan footage for that last game, filming stuff. And my phone, when we won the championship, my phone I'm trying to film and I'm just getting text after text after text after, like, WhatsApp messages, everybody going, oh my God, it's going to be amazing. When's the film coming out? And we got a bit stuck. But yeah, it was, I think I got something like 100 and something texts in the last 5 minutes of the football game.
I want to bring it back to the fans.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, on the We Are The Geordies poster and in the trailer, the quote that gets used is the famous quote from the legendary manager Jock Stein, which is that football without fans is nothing. And obviously over the last 12 months, I never thought I'd see it, but we have had a situation in which football has carried on without fans. So I'd like to ask you, from a football fan's perspective, what have you made of this last year? How do you think what was your expectations when it was announced that not only had football stopped, but it had started again and it won't be without fans for the foreseeable? Like, how did you see that going compared to how you think it's going now?
Again, it's been a bit of a strange one for me because I haven't really watched very much football in the last year, mainly because my son, who I mentioned earlier, just wouldn't really tolerate it at the moment. So I haven't watched a lot, but obviously I'm tapped into a lot of football fans, you know, on social media, Twitter especially. So you can see how they themselves are suffering not being at the games. Steve Bruce is incredibly lucky that there's no Newcastle fans at the games, because I think he'd be out of a job by now if there were. But I do think that the bits I have caught, it is rubbish without fans. You don't realise how much, even during the course of a game, how often the cameras do pan to somebody, you know, an expectant face in the crowd, or cheers of supporters, or, you know, the old Geordies with their heads in their hands crying because they've been relegated thing. You know, I mean, those things they do resonate kind of across the culture of football and football supporters. Yeah, and I think the fake crowd noise is just horrific.
Yeah, I mean, I want to get your opinion, but, you know, just to be completely frank, my opinion is I think you're being kind about it. I think I don't like watching football without fans. I know the angle is off the pitch, but I can still see the sidelines where the chairs are either covered up or empty, or they've got cardboard cutouts, or you've just got ground staff sitting in there. It's just not the same. Like, for me, it was important last season was finished. I'm a Liverpool fan, so I needed the season to finish properly, for us to win the title, for Leeds to come up. There was things that I wanted to sort of tie in and end. But my honest opinion was I did not want the new season to start without fans. If that meant pushing it back to October or whenever, I would rather that had happened. And we've gone a whole year without any away fans. We've gone a whole year without entire, at least, home capacities. And it's, you know, Jockstein's quote, "Football without fans is nothing," is used a lot before this pandemic. But football has carried on without fans. And I think what happened a few months ago with the £15 a game, where you can view it at home for £15, and it's just, I think for a long time football fans have felt quite taken advantage of by the whole system. And it has been interesting to see how it's gone. And although, yes, football is continuing, for me, this season is a bit of a, take nothing away from Man City and what they've done, and other teams that have done well this season. I just find football this season really difficult to connect to. And I just wanted to see what a fellow football fan thought.
I mean, I would agree with you. It has. I mean, I've had mitigating circumstances that have prevented me from connecting properly anyway. But I wouldn't disagree with what you're saying. And I think the worst thing was before Christmas, when they thought they were going to undo some of the lockdowns, and some teams had fans and some teams didn't, because I think that's deeply unfair. Either everybody has fans or nobody has fans. I think in between is wrong. And yeah, I mean, somewhere like St. James's Park, it needs the fans there because it's such a big cavernous space that without them there, it sounds like rubbish. It's difficult though, because Newcastle, even under Rafa, didn't play the most interesting football. So at least having the fans to focus on and some of the amusing chants kind of keeps you going in the moments where the match isn't super duper exciting. Yeah, football without fans is nothing. It kind of sucks, really.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully fans can get in the ground before the end of the season. That would be nice. I think it's possible, and I think they do have to start planning it now. I mean, we're not out of lockdown. I'm not going to say that, but we're almost there. So I'd like to get into a situation where that, at least that level of normality, resumes, because I think it will help a lot of people, not just the simple act of watching a football game at a ground. There's also the camaraderie that goes with it. It's the routines. It's going and getting a pie before games. It's seeing your mates. It's getting the programme or getting the paper and the stuff that happens afterwards as well. I think it's a big part of it. And if you had said to me this time last year, you're going to go a year without all of this stuff and everyone in the country and the world is just going to comply with that, I would have said 5 months in and people won't comply with it. And it just wouldn't make sense for it to carry on like that. But I think people have done an amazing job in staying away. I just hope that when things do go back, things can fall into place again and people can resume their love for the game, really.
Definitely. And you're right. I mean, you touched on some important stuff there around routines, around the camaraderie, around seeing your mates, because that very much was something we wanted to capture in the film. And one of the bits that we didn't ended up on the cutting room floor that I really liked was one of the fans at some point said, you know, the football's just a part of it, it's just a small part of it. And quite often it's the worst part of it. You know, it's the seeing your friends beforehand, going on a road trip to wherever, finding a pub, hooking up with other people, that kind of communal experience is very much part of what being a football fan and a football supporter is about, I think. And as much as the game's moved on with Sky and with this, and, you know, there are other ways of consuming, although you're right, never pay £15 for a pay-per-view. The live part of it, that being with your friends and being in a crowd, is really, really, really important.
100%. I also think that the players feel it as well. Like, you know, they're multi-millionaires, but I do feel sorry for them when they score an incredible goal, they go to celebrate, and it's just nothing. And there was a point a few weeks ago where they were told not to celebrate with their teammates. And I was just like, what is the point? Like, what is the point of you can't even celebrate with your teammates? You have to celebrate socially distanced. And so I'm not sure what's happened with that. But, you know, the last game I watched, people were sort of celebrating normally. So, yeah, like I said, I want everything to go back to normal sooner rather than later.
There's like a photograph that actually, I think, got syndicated around the world. And it was a Newcastle fan that took it from, can't remember what the game was, but we won in like the dying seconds, and Papi Cisse is jumping over the hoardings, and somebody just took a photograph of him on their phone, and that became the photograph for that match. And it's amazing. And then there was one when last year, what's his face, Almiron, who'd been signed in January and had gone so long without scoring, and then he scored and ran into the crowd and is celebrating with like this really cute little boy with a Newcastle United bobble hat on. And, you know, those moments are just not happening at the moment. It's a strange thing, because you kind of want to say they're manufactured, but they're not. They're sort of created naturally by just that total release of whatever it is.
You can't jump into the crowd with no one there.
No.
You can't do that. I mean, I quite liked it at the start. I think I remember Jamie Vardy doing it. He scored a goal and he went over to where the away end, the away fans would be, and he's sort of taunted them. Obviously, he's not looking at anything other than empty seats, but he's doing that, I suppose, that's what he would be doing anyway. And it was nice to see the players pretending, for the audience sake, to put on a show and sort of do what they would normally do to sort of replicate normality. But yeah, I don't think they sort of do that stuff anymore. I think they just, as soon as they score a goal, they turn, face their teammates and sort of celebrate like that.
You've definitely lost something. I mean, you're making me think now, like everybody thinks about Alan Shearer and his famous, you know, when he does a celebration like that. But my favourite Shearer celebration is when we beat Manchester United 5-0 in the Kevin Keegan Entertainer days. And this was before the top bit of St. James's Park, where everybody complains, the away fans complain, because you've got to go up 7 stories to get to your seat. But they used to be down by the pitch. And he actually was just running in front of the Manchester United fans doing that. And that was, it's just such a simple thing, but it's like a na 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 na. Yeah. And that was like an amazing, that to me was my favourite Alan Shearer celebration.
Definitely.
And of course, no fans there to taunt.
Yeah, so it's a weird time. For me, football without fans isn't quite football. It's a sterilised sort of temporary solution. But yeah, I want it ended as soon as possible. I'd like to end by asking you, what's next for you? Have you got any more documentaries planned? I know that you and the company that you're with do comedy as well. So what projects have you got coming up?
It's a strange one, because I've had 2 big projects, this being the second one, hanging over me for so long, trying to get through them, that I've actually got headspace for the first time in a long time. And you kind of find yourself going, what am I going to do? So we've got a few projects kind of quite early on, working with a few writers on the comedy front. Documentary, I've got a documentary that I'm hoping to be able to be involved with, which is already partway through happening, and I'm trying to get myself in there to help them finish it, which would be another sports one. And I had an amazing idea the other week, which is tip top secret at the minute, but if I can get about 4 things to fall in place, it'll be the best thing I've ever made.
Wow. Sounds amazing.
Like a proper, you just suddenly have this lightning bolt of inspiration. And I was like, this is a crackerjack idea. If I can get it to work, it'll be amazing.
Wow. Well, I mean, when the time comes, I'd love to hear more about it. I think, the audience that would have listened to this chat today, they, would love to follow your work and again, keep up to date with what you're doing. You mentioned that you're on Twitter. Are you across other social media as well that people can follow you on?
Well, we've got a website, which is fna.digital. Obviously, there's the film website, wearethegeordies.com. Twitter is @FNAFilms, but I generally just tweet a load of rubbish on there, particularly on match days when I might be very abusive to Steve Bruce. But yeah, that's about it.
Excellent. Well, guys, definitely follow Zahra. I'll put the links in the description below so you can follow Zahra's Newcastle United rants, but also the updates on the stuff that she's producing and making, which all sound incredibly exciting. Zahra, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate you coming on the channel to having a chat with me. Really enjoyed it. Enjoyed chatting about football, but also enjoyed chatting about the craft of making this incredible documentary. And again, we'll put the links in the description below for where you can watch We Are The Geordies. It sounds incredible, and I'm definitely going to give it a watch.
I'm really proud of it as a piece of work. It is a good film. And I know you're putting the links in the description, but it's on like a lot of like Sky Store and all that kind of stuff as well, all the platforms.
So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate you joining me. Guys, if you've enjoyed this video, drop a like on the video. Comment down below if you've got things to say, or if you've got any questions. If you've got any questions for Zahra, you can write them down below, and then I can reach out to Zahra and comment down below with her response. And yeah, subscribe to the channel. I've got more interviews planned, speaking to a bunch more interested and talented people, very much like Zahra. So yeah, subscribe to the channel so you get notified every time I upload a new interview. So yeah, Zahra, I'll speak to you soon. And guys, see you later.